Welcome to Bring the World Home, a production of the Returned Peace Corps Volunteers of Hawaii. My name is Chip Tilton. I served as a Peace Corps volunteer in Malaysia from 1966 to 1968, and I will be your host for today's program. In this program, we will be sharing with you one Peace Corps volunteer's experiences from abroad. Hopefully, our messages of friendship and family with people of all countries and cultures is exhibited in each of our shows. With us today is Michael Thomas, who served as a volunteer in Tonga from 1989 to 1993. Welcome, Michael.
Hello.
Glad you could be with us.
Thanks for having me on the show.
We have a little bit in common being in Hawaii with Tonga. I'd like to look on our globe here. We're out here in the middle of the Pacific, and Tonga is right down where we have this arrow.
Yep. Yeah, Tonga's about the same distance by plane from the west coast of the mainland, south from Hawaii. About 5-6 hours by airplane. And
on our map, what island were you stationed?
I was on the main island of Tonga called Tonga Tapu. Tonga's a chain of islands. It's about 169 or 170 islands that scatter out over probably more than 1,000 miles. So the island that I was on was where the capital, Nuku'alofa, is, and there's about 70,000 people.
And that's the seat of the government and the financial life of the country? And
yep. Yeah, most of the commerce, you know, and primarily an agricultural economy and fishing economy is based on that island, yeah.
Okay. And the country, the form of government is what?
It's actually one of the few absolute monarchies. So it's ruled by King Taupahau Tupou IV, and he was coronated in 1965. So he's still in power. They have a European parliamentary system. Yeah, so he's been in power for at least 30 years.
Okay. So you started your service in the Peace Corps in 1989. You're a young man.
Mm-hmm.
You must have been in college or just fresh out of college around that era. Could you describe for our viewers a little bit of what brought you to the Peace Corps? And
yeah, that's right. I had just recently finished a bachelor's degree from Virginia Tech, and I think maybe 6 months before I graduated, I became interested in opportunities, including employment after graduation.
Sure.
And Peace Corps was one of these opportunities that you know, I guess always knew about it, and it was in the back of my mind. I thought maybe this is something I could do if I get in the position of having an opportunity. So I went ahead and submitted an application, and I think within 6 months I had received news that my application was accepted, and I eventually accepted the assignment to go to Tonga.
May I back up a little bit? You say you always kind of knew of Peace Corps. You knew of it as a political entity, or
yeah, I guess I knew it was
a volunteer opportunity.
Yeah, I knew it was a volunteer organization, and I knew it had its roots in the Kennedy administration. I think at different points in my life, when I was going through primary school and secondary school, I had Peace Corps volunteers who came into the classroom. And one particular person I remember, he had served in Africa, and he was wearing the African dress, and he had a drum, and he had a great slideshow, and it just stuck, you know, in my mind at quite an early age. And growing up, I had a chance to travel quite a bit. And so I thought I might want to expand my horizons and go beyond just the borders of the United States.
Excellent. Well, okay, so to continue the story, you graduated from school, you applied for the Peace Corps.
Yeah, I finished up the education, and I actually had a degree in forestry, and I went ahead and applied to different forestry companies looking for international opportunities. And the responses I got back is that they did have some potential employment overseas, but they were primarily recruiting former Peace Corps volunteers to fill those positions. So they suggested that if I wanted to pursue international forestry, that I might commit 2 years towards a Peace Corps service. So that's how I kind of, ended up going and applying, and then eventually accepting the assignment.
So Peace Corps service doesn't have to be totally altruistic.
No, that's right.
And your invitation to go into service in Tonga was forewarned, or was a total surprise where you might end up serving?
No, it was quite a surprise. I believe on the application I put down 3 countries that I had kind of selected because of my interest, and I remember Costa Rica had been one, and I think Southeast Asia. I picked some broader categories of just regions
Places with a lot of trees.
Yeah, any place that has lots of plants. And when I received news that I was invited to go to Tonga, it honestly was the first time I had heard of the country. So.
So you, where did you do your training? You accepted the invitation, obviously, to go to Tonga, and
yeah, we did.
The usual path is to go to a training program before assignment. Is that what?
Yeah, we met here in Honolulu. It was actually a pretty good timing because we arrived just the day before Halloween. And Halloween in Honolulu is quite the social event.
It's a good introduction.
The cultural event. So we met here with maybe 50 or 60 volunteers that were going to be going to different regions, or different countries rather, in the South Pacific region. So Fiji and Samoa and Tonga. And they kind of put us through a 3 or 4 day program, which was pre-departure, prior to arrival to the country. And then once we arrived in the country, we went into a 3-month program where we did in-country training. And that was split between rural Tonga and in the capital of Nuku'alofa.
So that, back when I was in the Peace Corps, that is what you describe as a departure. We trained in the United States instead of in country, and I think that's certainly a great change for the better. To have that immersive experience.
Yeah,
once you did the training there, or excuse me, parts of your training included the usual language training. What else?
We basically were. You used the word immersion. That's pretty much what it was. We were introduced to a family from a small village. It was the village of Makave in Vava'u. And we were assigned a family that had already made pre-arrangement with Peace Corps that they were willing to host us. And the next day we met in a small school, and we began Tongan language training. And it went on for 6-7 weeks. And it included cross-cultural training, the history of the region, the agricultural system, geography, all different types of aspects that we were unfamiliar with.
And during that time, did you know what your ultimate assignment was going to be, or was that still unfolding for you?
Yeah, no, I knew I was assigned to the Ministry of Agriculture, and that I was going to be involved with improving agricultural production. And eventually, once I got to the research facility that I was assigned to, I aligned my strengths with what their requests were, and we went on from there.
And then once your training period was over, you went to an assigned village or area?
We actually came back to the main island, to the capital, Nuku'alofa, and had more of a urban setting where we stayed in with another homestay family, and we did additional training. And they were trying to contrast the rural lifestyle with the main capital. And then after that, we then were approved for service, and then the group that I was with separated, and we each went our own way to our different assignments, and I was placed on a research facility, agricultural research facility.
I'd like to fast forward just a little bit. I know that you're working at the University of Hawaii now. You're a doctor, and you have a PhD in botany.
That's right.
And part of this program, the idea of this program is to bring the world home. So you're still working in the field, obviously, is the reason that I fast forward. And you had the opportunity to bring what from your Tongan experience back to Hawaii at this point?
Yeah, well, you know, for me, my service in the Peace Corps was very, I guess, defining in terms of what direction I went with a career choice. And because I had this opportunity to assist in the Peace Corps and assist in the Tongan development, that I decided that I would continue in working with tropical agriculture. And so after my Peace Corps experience, I went back to school and pursued a master's degree and advanced graduate degrees. And but it was really grounded in the fact that I had this tropical agriculture experience in Tonga, and I enjoyed it. So prior to my Peace Corps experience, I was probably heading down a classic United States forestry model, where I would work for a large company in timber management or plantation management. But after my Peace Corps service, it kind of gave me a new path to go on, and I began to understand more about diversity, the diversity that occurs in tropical ecosystems. Growing up on the East Coast of the United States, we have less diversity in terms of agricultural produce. And so my participation in the Peace Corps service really just opened many doors and expanded the horizons for me.
So my not so wry joke of earlier about your Peace Corps service wasn't beginning from an altruistic foundation. What I'm hearing is during the course of the service, it became much more altruistic.
Yeah, no, it really helped shape the direction that I wanted to go in. And as I learned more about traditional Tongan farming systems, I became more interested and began to look into other avenues and other areas of interest that I just would not have had the opportunity for.
Well, the experience itself, let's go back to Tonga now, and you started working in the field as not as a farmer, but as what?
Yeah, no, it was basically a research advisor. I had some background in, like I said, forestry and plantation crops, but these were temperate fruit crops. These were peaches, pears, apples. And they felt that many of the same principles and skills in terms of management for pests and diseases could also apply in the tropical setting. And so the Tongan government was interested in increasing production of tropical fruit crops. And they felt such as mango, avocado, all your citrus crops, papaya, and then some local indigenous fruits. And they felt that they needed someone that had the basics and principles down in terms of orchard management and nursery crop management. And so I was able to take those skills and apply them in a different climate.
And so this was coming, this idea that you just described was coming from the Tongan government officials, or it was something that was a genesis of
Well, there had been a series of Peace Corps volunteers who had already served in the capacity of agricultural research advisors.
Okay.
And basically, in order for a volunteer to receive an assignment, the Tongan government puts in a request. And this takes years in advance of the arrival of a Peace Corps volunteer. So probably 2 years or 3 years prior to my arrival, within the framework of the Ministry of Agriculture, they had identified this as a scarce skill, and they needed some assistance with it. And so when I arrived, we had a whole series of meetings to begin to identify what my strengths were and how it fit into the government development plan. So one of the first things we decided that we should do is to construct a nursery and begin to look more long-term what is the production of small nursery plants that we're going to need to begin distributing to local farmers.
I believe you supplied us with a photograph of your nursery. And
There's
can you describe a little bit
there's a
about
photo,
the nursery for us?
Yeah, there's a photo here that details, basically, a standard facility that has shade cloth wrapped around it, overhead irrigation, and within there, I think there's another photo that shows vegetative propagation. We began to work towards not just cultivating a large number of plants, but also improving the variety or the type of quality of the fruits. So we got involved with a large scale importation of new and improved tree crop varieties, and we did vegetative propagation, and which takes 6 or 7 months to get plants into a situation where they can be transported out of the nursery. And then we distributed them through their extension service to interested farmers. And we traveled throughout the region and tried to get people excited about planting alternative crops. And we also used the radio because that was a really good form of communication because of the distances between islands.
Yes.
And we also shipped plants inter-island using the ferry system. And so we tried to provide an alternative to the traditional Tongan agricultural system.
Okay. I'd like to ask you to try and contrast a little bit the specific experience in Tonga, within that culture, within a culture, a foreign culture from your own, compared to your university experience or your knowledge of the forestry industry or more so-called Western system of research and development. The question I'm leading up to is, did you find it difficult to integrate your ideas, or did you find a problem in acceptance by the host country nationals to these new ideas?
Yeah.
You said you're trying to improve quality, so I mean, that tells me they had some of these kinds of fruits and fruit trees, etc.
I had the advantage that there had already been some volunteers working on this project. So right before my arrival, the project received a large grant that had been authored by the previous Peace Corps volunteer.
I see.
So many of the questions that may have developed from a project starting from scratch had already been ironed out. So I was fortunate that I didn't have to deal with too many changes or unknown questions.
Yeah.
So I really benefited from the people who had come before me. But there are still many, many changes that my Western scientific training brought to the project. There was some local knowledge that was brought into the project, so it ended up being a very integrated approach. I didn't have all the answers to many of the questions that we were asking, and the Tongan agricultural system embraced tropical fruit trees, but there was a problem with decreasing tree densities because of the area is very prone to hurricanes. That the Tongan government had just recognized that there was less and less fruit trees in the market, and that the solution was to begin to propagate some and offer it through their extension service.
A lot of American citizens, taxpayers, if you will, wonder if the money spent on Peace Corps volunteer system, an institution now, could be better spent in in maybe a more formal or a more accountable, if you will, way overseas. Well, do you have any reflection on?
Yeah, well, and with my experience, I can definitely say that I think the dollar spent with the United States Peace Corps is one of the best dollars spent on foreign policy. that
We'll pay you for that commercial later.
Yeah, that I've met a lot of volunteers and have had a chance to interact with a lot of people who were host country nationals that were counterparts to volunteers, and I've just seen a lot of positive feedback out of this organization, and I think my experience is one that I think was probably typical. I don't think it was that different than, say, your experience, and that I'm still supportive, and I would like to see other people continue to have this opportunity in the coming years.
I guess kind of what I'm driving at, there's a lot of current dialogue about the private sector involvement in public services versus public support and public institutions.
Yeah.
Do you think that a private business could have come in and done a better job of the type of work that you were doing than you were able to, or are there more lasting benefits that you can point out to our viewers
I think
the Peace Corps experience?
Yeah, I think as an institution, Peace Corps had been in Tonga when I arrived for nearly 30 years. So it simply was the most respected volunteer organization there. Something like probably several hundred, maybe 500 Peace Corps volunteers had served in Tonga.
And I guess you mean sincerely respected, not just by virtue of the longevity of the...
Yeah, it's not uncommon that you would meet somebody and they would ask you if you knew somebody who had been there 25 years prior. And they would then begin to tell stories about how they were a teacher and how they really were embraced by the community, and how their language skills were very, very good. There's lots of volunteer organizations in the world that do international development, but very few have the requisite of in-country training that Peace Corps has today.
Yes.
And very few have the commitment to making sure that volunteers are involved with community. So I think it's a very, very good opportunity for people.
Well, I know a little bit about your subsequent history from our earlier conversations. We just have a few more minutes, and I'd like to focus on that. Obviously, you do believe in the Peace Corps, and one of the purposes of our program is to hopefully get viewers excited about the idea of exploring the Peace Corps experience more, seeing if it might be for them. You went on to become a Peace Corps recruiter after your service in Tonga. Could you tell us a little bit about that? And
sure.
Tell our listeners what they might expect.
Yeah, I had the opportunity probably a few years after my Peace Corps service at the University of Florida that we had a on-campus Peace Corps recruiter program that was initiated.
Just like they have at UH currently?
At the UH Manoa currently has the same program, and the idea is to make a link with major educational institutions and have someone on campus who already served in the Peace Corps, and to have that person as a resource and information source and really a voice for Peace Corps. And so I was able to assist in that way and began a recruiting program. And over a 2-year period, we nominated about 100 students that were recent graduates, and also people from the community. Peace Corps isn't just somebody who has a recent college degree and is in their early 20s. Peace Corps can accept people from all walks of life, all ages, and so we had a lot of people who came from off campus to the campus recruiting facility. They were married couples, elderly people that had the same commitment that a young college graduate had.
Sure.
So, I would encourage people who might be listening to the show to contact UH Manoa Peace Corps recruiting office if they wanted additional information about opportunities.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I hope that your personal plea and some of the experiences described today can stimulate that a bit. One thing that I always wonder with volunteers that I talk to is it seems to affect us all very positively, but were there any downsides that you want to share with us?
Yeah, sure.
I know there must have been, whether you're willing to share them or not. The
yeah.
last minute or so we have.
Yeah. You know, Peace Corps is not an easy commitment. It requires you to be immersed in another culture, and that sometimes that culture is something that's very foreign to you. And so it requires you to sometimes listen and not speak when you want to speak, and watch. And with those very simple skills, you can get through many of the difficult, different types of conflicts that you may have in a cross-cultural setting.
Well, that's a very good observation, Michael. That's so true, not only in service overseas, but would serve us all well to remember in our daily lives here in the United States. One last thing that I'd like to bring up, we just have 30 seconds or so, but the tapa cloth that we have here in front of us is a relic from your visit, and
this
very similar to
Hawaiian
what we
tapa
see in
cloth.
Hawaiian
It's made from a paper mulberry tree, and it's probably the most common gift that you would receive from a community and other people that you worked with. So it's just an example that I wanted to bring along to show a little bit about the Tongan culture.
Well, it's been very nice visiting with you, and I hope that we'll have a chance to spread the message a little bit more. Thank you again, Michael, for coming today.
My pleasure.
Please join us next time when we visit another country and bring the world home.